This is CBC Vancouver News.
That's kind of the one thing I remember about him is just, he was always smiling, he was always laughing.
A 22-year-old Vancouver man is among the hundreds who died at the hands of Hamas. We hear from his loved ones here. Plus,
just strengthening to be together with community.
I'm here to show solidarity with Israel, with my community.
Thousands gather downtown tonight for a vigil to remember those killed in Israel and as a symbolic show of solidarity. And
it's great that the federal government is throwing money at this, but we need to have a plan.
BC becomes the first province to sign a new healthcare deal with the feds. But will it satisfy smaller communities facing continual ER closures? Good evening, I'm Tanya Fletcher. We begin once again in the Middle East. Israel has stepped up airstrikes on day 4 of its war with Hamas. Israeli warplanes reduced buildings to rubble and sent people in the Gaza Strip scrambling for safety in retaliation for that surprise deadly attack by Hamas militants on Saturday. That multi-pronged weekend assault marked the single deadliest day ever for Israel. The number of casualties there has surpassed 1,000 now, while nearly 900 Palestinians have been killed as well. Israel says it has finally secured its border with Gaza. The territory is under a total siege by Israel, with a blockade on food, water, fuel, and medicine. Meanwhile, rockets continue to rain down on Israeli cities from the Palestinian territory. Well, the sheer scale of Saturday's attack in Israel is becoming more clear now. Israel's military has revealed disturbing information about the attack by Hamas in one particular community. Our Chris Brown is on the ground in southern Israel, and a warning, this report does include disturbing images.
As Israel continues to count its dead from Hamas's surprise attack, its military is revealing some of the horrific ways people died. This is Kfar Aza, where the bloated bodies of Hamas gunmen still lie in the open.
You see the babies, the mother, the fathers in the bedrooms, in the protection rooms, and how the terrorists kill them. It's not a war, it's a massacre.
Some images are just too awful to show, with blood everywhere. Dozens of Hamas militants stormed in, killing the guards, burning homes and butchering entire families, say Israeli soldiers. Remains are only now being removed because the last gunmen were only killed a few hours before this visit. On that awful day, medic Shalom Abitan was sent to Kfar Aza as a first responder. He didn't realize he was arriving at a massacre and was further stunned to be handed one of 2 babies.
They were screaming, they were dehydrated. The soldier told me that the parents are not with them anymore. They were all captured or they were killed. Until then, we were dealing with people without any hands and shot in terrible conditions. It was suddenly you're getting a baby, a small baby, and you feel that you can give him the feeling of being safe.
Hamas's inhumanity is also now visible from the dash cam footage of people shot in their cars that morning, their vehicles coasting to a stop with the drivers dead inside. Another barrage of rockets was launched from Gaza Tuesday, striking targets in Israel's south, where people are preparing for what they expect will be a long war. We visited Negba, where we met Nofar Melek Shalom, a pregnant mother of 2 and a Canadian from London, Ontario.
We stay with our friends in their safe room.
Because why?
Just scared of sleeping in our house right now because there are still terrorists walking around and they don't know where all of them are yet.
This kibbutz, a communal settlement, is designed to be self-sufficient. Hen Levran on the security team said if there is a ground war with more Hamas incursions, he will be ready.
We have a perimeter defense system here with armed guys like me ready. We got, look towers and watch towers. We have communications. We have a war room.
That's the CBC's Chris Brown in southern Israel tonight. Well, a Vancouver family and an entire community are grieving after learning a local man is among the dead in Israel. As Leanne Young reports, 22-year-old Ben Mizrahi was one of hundreds at that music festival when Hamas militants moved in and attacked.
A somber scene at Vancouver's King David High School. They're remembering one of their own.
Just gutted to hear this news. Ben was a much loved member of our community. He was a big brother to his siblings. He was very well liked by all his teachers.
Messages of support cover the walls. Ben Mizrahi was killed in Israel over the weekend. He graduated in 2018.
Involved in absolutely everything. If you look at any of our yearbooks, while Ben was here, he's pretty much on every page. He loved to do everything, and he was kind, really loved to help people, and he really loved Israel.
That connection prompted him to move there after high school, but sadly, the 22-year-old's life was cut short. Over the weekend, Hamas militants attacked while he was at a music festival in southern Israel.
We learned Saturday that he was missing. We were all hoping for the best, that he'd be found alive and safe.
Mizrahi was killed along with hundreds of other young people. Chaplarosh is still in shock. His friend since high school is gone.
He was full of life. That's kind of the one thing I remember about him is just, he was always smiling. He was always laughing.
Always up for an adventure. A talented basketball player and a big brother to 3 siblings. Friends say Ben and his family have deep roots here.
The Vancouver Jewish community is a very tight-knit community. It's very painful. We feel this loss very, very deeply.
This neighbor, who's also a rabbi, held vigil with Ben's parents just before they flew to Israel to search for him.
There's a state of shock. In fact, there's not something that you can't really speak about it even. There's just silence. The pit of worry brings about silence.
Infeld says before Mizrahi's passing, his family heard he was using his skills as a military medic to help others. Since then, there's been an outpouring of support.
I just want to send out a message to Mr. Mizrahi's family and friends that we stand with them, and we stand with Israel in the face of these awful attacks. And it is profoundly disturbing to all of us, and we're grieving with them today.
The Mizrahi family are preparing now for Ben's funeral, scheduled for tomorrow. Leanne Young, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, tonight, local Jewish groups held a vigil in downtown Vancouver for those killed in Israel. Thousands came together at Jack Pool Plaza to console and support one another. Our Liam Britton has more from the gathering.
Here behind me in Jack Pool Plaza in Vancouver, hundreds of people gathering in support of Israel after a shocking attack on that country just late last week. Dignitaries addressing the crowd like Harjit Sajjan with the federal government, calling what happened in Israel an atrocity, one that hurt so much to see. Selena Robinson in the provincial cabinet mentioning that as a Jewish person, she says she's never felt more fear. We're talking about the death of Ben Mizrahi, a Vancouver man who died in the initial attack. His friends spoke of him and how he was a true mensch, a genuine guy who everyone knew and loved, and his death has really made what happened out in Israel hit very close to home. The message from a lot of people here is that this is a tight community, and when something happens in Israel, they feel it here. And that's what Ezra Shankin from the Jewish Federation of Greater Vancouver had to say.
It's not uncommon for us to have people here that are deeply connected to people over there. And one of the things that we've been observing over these last few days is just how interconnected folks are here and how much pain there is within our community.
So a lot of people coming together, coming to grips with something so horrible and trying to be here for each other in the face of it. Liam Britton, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, Palestinians who stand against Hamas are also concerned about the safety of civilians. Mohammed Fayed moved to Canada as a political refugee about a year and a half ago. He says he had to leave his 2 children behind.
I can't control myself. I'm dad, so as I dad, I am very concerned about their safety. And I am very worried and fear that I'm going to lose them at any moment. And I wish my voice can reach to IRCC or government in Canada in order to just make anything for my kids, just to make sure they're still alive and make sure that if they can do any process for them to take him out from Gaza as soon as possible.
Now, Ottawa says it will begin airlifting Canadians out of Israel via Tel Aviv in the coming days. The flights will be for Canadian citizens, permanent residents, and their immediate families. In other news today, BC has become the first province to sign a new healthcare deal with the federal government. It includes more than $1 billion in extra funding, but as Mira Baines reports, smaller communities facing continual ER closures say there needs to be a plan to get that money to where it's needed most and fast.
It's official. BC's bilateral deal on healthcare with Ottawa adds $1.2 billion in funding over the next 3 years. It's the first deal signed with provinces and territories after an increase in federal health transfers.
This historic support includes $25 billion to provinces and territories for tailored plans that will focus on the unique needs of people in each province and territory.
In March, the province reached a deal with the federal government after a big push for money during the pandemic. Provinces and territories get a 5% annual hike to the federal health transfers for the next 5 years. BC has been under pressure because of severe shortages of doctors, nurses, and other healthcare workers in hospitals and family practices.
The largest share of the money under this agreement will go to support nurses, particularly nurses in acute care. So that's $200, $250, and $300 million in each of the next 3 years of the agreement. That's $750 over 3, and that's the majority of the funds in the agreement.
Some of the $1.2 billion is also earmarked for mental health and addictions treatment.
What do we want?
Still, rallies have been held across BC for more healthcare dollars as rural communities endure repeated emergency room closures. The mayor of Merritt says they need a lot more help and planning.
This is 15 times we've been down in 10 months. And on this weekend, New Denver, Oliver, Caremius, and Merritt were all down at the same time. And that's consistently happening over and over again.
He says the city shouldn't have to pay tax dollars for the days when their ER was closed. Other provinces and territories are expected to sign new deals with Ottawa in the coming days. The only province without one is Quebec. Mira Baines, CBC News, Vancouver.
The province launched its fall immunization campaign today. Updated COVID and influenza vaccines are now available. Michelle Gassoub has more.
COVID and flu vaccines have landed in BC pharmacies. Already, pharmacists have had a busy day with appointments.
We have a lot of people that are pre-booked, so we're taking pre-bookings for COVID only.
With cases of respiratory illnesses on the rise, BC has ordered 2.8 million doses of the updated COVID-19 vaccines and 2.3 million doses of the new influenza or flu vaccine.
Individuals want to get both vaccines at the same time. That's completely safe. We just usually put them in 2 separate arms just to avoid having a really sore arm. But the immune system response is still going to be as robust.
Influenza vaccines are available by appointment or to drop-ins. For COVID shots, you'll need to wait for a text or email invitation from the province. Currently, elderly people and healthcare workers are being prioritized for those.
Today, across British Columbia, 30,000 people have made appointments.
Even if you've had COVID before and been vaccinated against it, it's recommended you get a booster. The virus mutates slowly over months, and this updated COVID vaccine targets the latest Omicron subvariant.
The virus changes enough over several months where that changes collectively come to the point where your immune system isn't able to actually respond in a strong, robust way.
If you've had a recent COVID infection, it's recommended you wait 1 to 3 months before getting a booster, though you're still encouraged to get vaccinated against the flu. Michelle Gassoub, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, BC service providers say there aren't enough places for people to safely use drugs. This comes after the province proposed legislation that would ban drug use in many public spaces. Yasmin Tonea has reaction.
So we've got Shelter Room A here.
Vancouver's Union Gospel Mission supports people who are homeless, some of whom also struggle with addiction.
Homelessness and addiction might not be one and the same, but they are often related. And if we want to see any meaningful, tangible change in anyone's lives, we need to work together and build a strong pathway.
The organization says the province's public drug use bill could force people who are unhoused to use drugs in unsafe environments. If passed, the law would ban illicit drug use within 6 meters of all building entrances and bus stops and in parks, beaches, and sports fields.
We know that drug users who use alone are the most likely to die, so we don't want them using alone.
UGM is among the many voices saying more needs to be done to help people escape homelessness.
We need more housing that isn't just like a random place where people can lay their heads, but a place that actually has wraparound support.
Service providers are also questioning where drug users are supposed to go when they say there aren't enough overdose prevention sites. Vancouver has a dozen, but northern BC only has a handful. One of the 2 sites in Prince George started limiting its hours last month, closing 3 days a week because of a lack of funding.
We were open in the mornings, in the afternoons, and now we're only open in the afternoon, so people can't come in and use. And it also, we lose connection with those people being closed for those days.
It literally just comes down to funding. Like, we have people that are willing and like dying, literally dying to do this work.
The provincial government says it introduced the drug use bill in the name of safety, adding that it will work with communities to expand resources for treatment. Yasmin Ranaya, CBC News, Vancouver.
Still to come, a gold mine near Quesnel gets a green light from the province, but not everyone is happy about it. We'll explain why after the break. And thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream. BC has more than doubled its previous record for area burned during a single wildfire season. With climate change fueling more and more extreme weather, destructive summers like this year's are expected to be more and more common in the future. And as Janella Hamilton reports, that has the province's independent forest watchdog calling for radical action.
Feel the heat? More than 3 million hectares of land has been scorched in 2023, a huge jump from BC's previous record set during the 2018 wildfire season.
Oh my God, that is roaring.
This year's unprecedented wildfire season is reigniting calls to spend more time and money on mitigation work. BC's Forest Practices Board is calling for measures to proactively protect the interface around communities and beyond.
Around 38 million hectares of land is at high risk of wildfire.
Wildfire experts say decades of zealous fire suppression tactics have left much of BC's landscape littered with vegetation. In June, the board gave the government a list of recommendations to change how the province's land is managed.
There's a significant situation in front of us, so we're hoping there'll be some strong, bold moves.
Measures that include thinning forests, encouraging the growth of more fire-resistant tree species, creating fuel breaks, and more frequent prescribed and Indigenous cultural burning.
After timber harvesting or in an area where there's clearing, you would, on purpose, light a fire and remove all the understory, the grass that would burn the debris that's building up.
Not only are lives, homes, human health, and livelihoods at risk, but fighting these kinds of fires also comes with a heavy price tag. So far this year in BC, upwards of $1 billion.
What could we have accomplished if we used that same amount of money proactively? We're spending the money on the wrong end of the problem.
It's a tough sell to spend money up front for something that hasn't happened yet.
Her group will be releasing a report in the coming days, making a number of their own recommendations.
There is a guarded optimism out there that the task force at hand and that this season that we've just had will be sort of the leveraging point for true transformative change across the province.
That climate task force announced by the Premier a month ago will look at lessons learned from the past and best practices for the future, but so far with no timeline attached. Janella Hamilton, CBC News, Vancouver.
Welcome back. The community of Wells, west of Quesnel, is one step closer to a new gold mine. After a lengthy review, the project has been granted an environmental assessment certificate. The mining company, Osisko, must follow a number of rules, though, in order to stay in good standing. That includes noise limits, policies around work camps, and regular community meetings. The proposed site has faced opposition from some in the town. They fear the mine will negatively affect tourism and their quality of life. Well, some 200 South African firefighters who helped fight BC's wildfires this year have returned home. They were deployed at the end of August as part of a larger contingent of more than 800 personnel. Well, the BC Wildfire Service released this video of South Africans reflecting on their experience here.
This is the fourth deployment from South Africa to come and assist Canada. The first three deployments, they assisted mostly in Alberta, and the fourth one now has moved up to British Columbia.
And what I learned about British Columbia, you will find out sometimes it will be rainy. Back in South Africa, we know that when it's raining, we know that the fire is going to run out. But here, can be able to wear the raincoat to go to the fires, and then we still find the hotspot.
Remember, back in South Africa, our fires, the conditions are not the same, are slightly different. So to speak of the ash pits, so to speak of when we are fighting fires, we have to dig at some point and to find the hotspot. But in South Africa, it's just the fires that are running on top of the surface.
And you're looking at a live shot of Georgia Street in downtown Vancouver. Well, a midweek washout for parts of the province. We'll find out when the sun will return with your 5-day forecast coming up next.
The future of the biggest ranch in North America is in jeopardy. That's the Gang Ranch near Williams Lake in British Columbia. The BC government says there are too few cowboys riding herd on too many cattle. The result, it says, is severe overgrazing and damage to Crown land. It wants to cut back on the herd, but the owner wants to expand. Jerry Thompson explains the dilemma.
Just under 1 million acres, bigger than any single ranch in Alberta, bigger even than the King Ranch in Texas. But size is deceptive. Almost all this vast territory is Crown land, leased to Gang Ranch for grazing. And because it is Crown land, there are special rules about how the work is done. For instance, four-wheel drive vehicles are not allowed.
This is one of the last places in the world where they still round up cattle the same way they did 100 years ago, with cowboys on horseback. And that may be one of the prime reasons why the Gang Ranch is having such a problem. These days, it's hard to find enough cowboys who know how to do this.
It's a dying breed. The true professional cowboys are very hard to come by. And to get the true professional cowboy who is 12 months out of the year, that's his career, and always will be his career, those people are hard to find, and they're getting fewer and fewer.
Until the cattle are brought down from the hills for winter, they run wild up here, eating the same grass that the deer, moose, and mountain goats eat. And according to the Forest Service, the cattle are eating way too much of it.
The problem with Gang Ranch was that he didn't disperse enough cowboys into the backcountry to move the cattle around so that they would only eat 50% of the grass that was there.
There are ranches with far more cattle than this. In fact, the Douglas Lake Ranch south of here runs 6 or 8 times as many cattle per acre of land. But that's because they own the land, fence it off, and irrigate it. Gang Ranch is one of the last big Old West cattle operations that doesn't want to be fenced in.
One of the problems that ranches are facing today and have for years is the encroaching involvement of government. If it keeps going, cattle ranching as we know it here may be a dying trade in the future.
Even with high interest rates and sagging beef prices, Al Sager is, like a lot of cattlemen, a stubborn optimist. He's asked permission to try again next spring with 1,000 extra cows in the wilderness. But if the government says no, that may be the end. Jerry Thompson, CBC News, on the Gang Ranch.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
The Chutzpah Festival returns November 2nd to 23rd with an exciting lineup of performances, including dance, music, theater, and more. For tickets, visit chutzpahfestival.com. And join CBC Vancouver's Leanne Young at the Alumni UBC Achievement Awards November 14th. The event honors members of the UBC community through their endeavors and commitment to help shape a better world.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace. To cool and clean the air in your home, call Direct Buy Furnace. Installing Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
And Darius Madavi joins us now with a look at the forecast. Darius, it really came down today, that rain. Is this something we should get used to this week?
No, looks like that was the last of it. We've got a small chance still tomorrow morning, but most of what we saw today is going to be the end of our rain. Still a little bit holding out tonight in some places, both on the island and throughout the interior, but those are really just scattered showers that are popping up, not like the downpour that we had, at least here in Vancouver this morning. And then that continues into tomorrow morning before we start to see some clearing up. So over the next 24 hours, don't expect to see anything like what we saw today. For the most part, we're clearing up across the province, just a little bit still happening in some bands of precipitation that are still just lingering and making their way through. But other than that, we're clearing up into the end of this week, and so temperatures are going to climb. Now, this is where we'd usually be this time of year for the most part. I want to say this is based on satellite observations, and the sort of accuracy is not great because it's a 20-kilometer resolution. So some places like Kamloops, it says 10 degrees. Really, this time of year would be around 15. Same with Revelstoke, about 5 degrees higher than that. But it does give you a province-wide, a pretty good idea of where we'd usually be this time of year. And so we are quite a bit above that still over the next few days. We're back at seasonal for now, but over the next couple of days, we start to climb again, especially in the north where we're well above seasonal. And then Thursday and Friday, as we get sunny skies for the most part across most of the province, except maybe the southeast and northeast, or northwest, sorry, we start to see those that above seasonal temperature return with that sun. So expect a pretty clear end of this week, not like the rain that we've had the last few days. For tomorrow, though, we got that bit of sun that starts to move in. A lot of this cloud will start to clear out as we get late into the afternoon. Most of these showers that you see still scattered around the province should finish out by the morning, and that's the story here in Vancouver as well. We've got a small chance of some showers continuing tomorrow morning before the sun comes out. We see temperatures rise even more inland than we do here on the coast, and we've got a great end of this week before the rain returns this weekend.
A lot of back and forth. We will certainly get used to that. Thanks, Darius.
Thanks, Tanya.
And that is your late news for this Tuesday, October 10th. For news anytime, anywhere, you can download the free CBC News app. You can always find us online as well. We're at cbc.ca/BC. Your next local newscast is on the early edition. That's on CBC Radio 1 starting tomorrow morning at 5 o'clock. Thank you so much for joining us. Good night.